Okay, so I wanted to make a video about what I do. I do photography of all sorts of different photography, but I do enjoy doing street photography, and something that I shoot with is a Canon 5D Mark IV. I notice like a lot of people online typically don't want to shoot with a big DSLR. They think it's bulky, it gets in the way, like settings, they don't want to mess with settings and stuff, but like as for me, I got the 5D Mark IV because it can do whatever I want. Now, with that said, I am kind of looking at getting something just for street photography or hanging around with my friends. I don't want to always carry my DSLR. But if you do have a DSLR or you're looking to get a 5D Mark IV, because the 5 is rumored to come out and this one is going to get cheaper, and it's a really good camera if you're not super interested in 4K, because that's kind of the downfall. But anyway, I'll get to that in a review, which I plan on making later. And for now, I wanted to talk about street photography with the Canon 5D Mark IV. First things first, I'm going to do settings, then I'm going to do custom dials and modes that I set up on my camera, and then the final thing would be the lenses that I shoot with. Now, I don't carry all of them all the time, but we'll get to that at the end of the video. I usually shoot in AV mode, or I shoot in one of the custom dial settings that I created. I'll get to the custom dial settings later, but typically I shoot in AV mode, and I kind of just trust the auto settings for most of my work. The 5D Mark IV is fantastic when it comes to knowing what to do and not setting the wrong like shutter speed or ISO and stuff like that. I don't find that I typically have a problem with that, but as it goes on later into the day, I'll start kind of tweaking the ISO, or if I want to get more creative, then I'll switch to, say, manual mode or something like that and start messing with like shutter speed and such. Typically, one thing that I do, no matter what I'm shooting really, I always shoot almost one full stop down. This causes a lot of people to say like, oh, your pictures are really dark in camera. It's protecting my highlights. It's so that I know that if there's a bright light in a window or something like that, I can pull the highlights down and it's going to protect that, so I still have the detail and the color in that, and then I can pull the shadows up and I just do a little balance check and I get the shot that I was trying to get, rather than just having this white like horrible reflection on something. There goes the light again. Overheat? Oh. Hopefully that didn't get too dark. My light just kind of, I think it's maybe the batteries are getting low. I've been using it a lot as a video light. So it might be that. Hopefully it's not too annoying. Let's set as far as aperture goes, that does kind of depend on your lens, but I typically don't want to shoot down something like 1.8 all the time, because you're very likely to miss the focus in your shot. And sometimes, yeah, that's going to be a really nice shot, but if you miss it, you know, now you just have a blurry mess and it didn't matter anyway. So I usually, when I'm running around the street, will shoot around like a 2.8. It provides a lot of speed, but it also makes sure that I am not just like missing it by like that much focus, because that's gonna bother me. I have gotten shots where I thought it was perfect and I looked at it and the focus was just that much off, and it bugs me. Like sometimes I can post on Instagram and you can't really tell because of the way that Instagram is and how small the photo is, but like it's not something I would ever want to print or be super proud of. So another thing that I think is something that sped up my shooting a lot and made sure that I was always kind of like nailing the shots, I use the single autofocus point. That's it. It stays like either dead center, or I put it around like somewhere around in that picture. That way I know where the camera is gonna look, because you know when you like pick up the camera and you have one of the other settings on, and now instead of focusing say on the person or the car, you got a building in the background. And yeah, that's typically pretty frustrating, and it also causes you to like look, and then now you gotta check more. At least with a single autofocus point, I don't need to chimp too much. I know that I got it. I saw the red and I clicked it, and you know, for the most part that's pretty good. The thing also with that is, say you set it up to the right or the left a little bit, when you go to pick your camera up and shoot something, you know it's right there. So you know when you pick that camera up, it's sitting like right here, and you can place your subject right there without thinking about it or having to like do one of these things and then move. you just know where your autofocus point is all the time when you're shooting. It helped me out a lot. I recommend that you do it, and you'll get really good shots really quickly, I think. Another setting that I do use, now these settings that I'm gonna start getting into right here are starting to slow down the process. So far in this video I've talked about kind of speeding everything up, and it kind of balances in the way that I also slow things down. This setting is the anti-flicker mode, and it causes the shutter to release like a little bit slowly. And it is so that, you know those like neon signs that you see in Japan that we all want to take pictures of, right? Makes a beautiful background, but it doesn't if only half of that sign is lit. That's what anti-flicker mode is for, because these signs are not a constant light. They're actually flickering at a high speed to where when we look at it, it looks constant, but when the camera looks at it, it shoots so fast, it's not constant, and you get half of a sign. I've taken some photos I really liked, and I had signs all blown out all over the place, and it wasn't this colorful photo I thought it was gonna be, and it just, the moment was gone, and that was it. So I pretty much always shoot with that on if I'm running around Japan especially. It slows it down a little bit, but it's not much that I would say that I really notice, and at least I get the shot that I was going for. So it's a little bit of a balance. There is times where I turn it off if I know that I don't have to deal with that problem. Like if I'm in Kabukicho, I leave it on. If I'm in some other random neighborhood where there's not really that kind of lighting, I might click it off. The next things, however, these are 3 different modes that I'm going to talk about, and they are your camera's silent level shooting modes. There is one for the, like if you're looking through the viewfinder, and you can use the silent level shooting mode there. It does make it quieter. I wouldn't say it's, saying silent is kind of funny, but so yeah, that helps a little bit, right? It's not as loud. It's pretty loud without it anyway, and with it on I would still say it makes definitely a noise. Like if you're walking by, you'll hear it. The second 2, however, are these are just for live view. If you try to use them with the viewfinder, it really doesn't do anything. It just, you're gonna get the same shutter sound that you were getting previously. In the live view, however, it is kind of nice because then you can kind of stand there and take the picture, and you can touch the screen or whatever you'd like to do and get the shot, or just do like the, what is that called? Range focusing. You can do that too, and then just get it. And these 2 modes are actually quite a bit more quiet. Quite a bit more quiet. Okay. So in mode 1, in the live view settings, you operate the camera as normal. It slows it down a bit. Like you're not going to be able to like burst off a bunch of shots, but I think for street photography we're typically not anyway. I mean, I'm not usually. I usually take it kind of more of as a slow process. This one will slow your camera down a little bit, but it's not slowing the actual photo down, it's just slowing the burst rate, like the shooting rate that you have down, and it releases the mechanics in the camera slower, so it's more of like a cushioned impact, so it does make it a bit quieter. Mode 2 makes it even more quieter by splitting the 2 sounds that you're hearing, because when you press the shutter on mode 2, it will take the shot, and if you hold the shutter down, it's not going to put the mechanics back down until you let that go. So you could take a shot and then keep moving and then let it go, and you have that shot that you took right here. This mode is cool, but I think it makes my process a little bit too slow. The next settings are a little bit more technical, and I will show you these and I will tell you about them, but I would say find what you're looking for most in these settings. You can fine tune your camera in the autofocus settings. This part was really cool to me when I found out about these. Like shortly after I got the camera, I started kind of tweaking it and seeing what I liked best. If I liked the camera to, if I just press the shutter, is it gonna just shoot whether it's focused or not, or do you want it to sit there and track? Personally, sometimes I knew that it was pretty much in focus, and I didn't want it to track if it, if it was already good. So I set mine to shoot the first shot, even if it's not fully like thinking it's in focus yet, and then that second shot it will focus harder, so it kind of takes the 2 shots to get through it. I'm not missing a shot because of it's accidentally tracking. If I know it's good, I'll just shove the button down and I'll get it. Another thing though is if you go into these settings, rather than being like scared you're gonna mess something up, you can go through each one of these settings and you can hit info and it'll tell you about it, and it'll tell you what happens if you hit, you know, more left or more right, +1, -1. It's gonna give you all the details on that. So I would say just take your time, go through these settings. There's always ways to reset the settings if you feel like you screwed everything up, but just take your time on it and see what works best for you. Maybe you want the camera to be always making sure that it's locking focus before it releases the shutter, and that's just fine tuning for your autofocus. So I mean, if you're doing manual focus, you don't need to worry about these settings. Another thing that I went through and did, I have 2 custom menus, and these are amazing. I didn't really think about them much when I first got the camera. I thought like, why would I use that? You know, like the settings are all right here. And then I realized that there's settings I want to get to as fast as possible, like communication settings, the anti-flicker mode, like HDR mode. There's a bunch of different things that you're gonna want to change settings in the camera quickly, like in-body type stuff, you know. So you can put all of those into your custom menu, and when you put them in your custom menu, then I just leave it on the custom menu, so when I hit the menu button, I'm on one of those 2 windows, and I have all the settings that I need to get to quickly all right in one spot. Even like formatting cards, changing folders, I think I said Wi-Fi. It gives me more time to focus on shooting rather than fumbling through my camera, and there's a lot of settings on this camera, so I don't really want to go through each window every time I want to do something. The next custom thing, which is something that I also didn't think that I would use, but it turns out that it's actually really beneficial to use the custom settings dials. Those things, fantastic. I have 3 of them, and I set the 1 to like a manual mode, so that all the settings are accessible if I'm in that one, but I set it to a slow exposure mode. So every time I switch to that setting, it resets itself to the 3 seconds with the aperture that I want, and all the settings that I want are all automatically there. So when I'm at nighttime trying to do the slow exposure effects that I like doing, it's already ready for me to do that. I don't need to set up my camera, I just turn the dial. The next one, I have a monochrome setting that I like to use that has a little bit more, I push the contrast and stuff in there. I really like that I can just switch to black and white like that without having to reset things. And you know, I know you can switch to black and white on the screen, but there's certain settings that I want around those black and white settings that now I would have to adjust for every little thing. And it's really nice to just turn the dial to that. The third one is my, I did a 4:3 aspect ratio, and I do like shooting in this. If you're shooting raw, when you go to Lightroom, it's you can recover the rest of the photo if you want, but I like the 4:3 aspect ratio, especially for, I don't know, I just feel like it gives that kind of like square medium format look on a full frame, and I enjoy it. I think the square photos are nice. We should start doing square photos more, I think. But yeah, those are my 3 modes, and how you change them is you just go into the settings in here. Basically, you just set up whatever mode that you want. I recommend, like I said, using like AV or manual. If you do manual and then you save those settings into the custom settings dial, all of your settings are accessible just like in manual mode, but it will start with the settings that you saved over it with. Same thing with all the other ones. If you use aperture priority mode, it's going to be aperture priority mode with the settings that you saved at that time on the dial. So I kind of recommend using manual if you're looking for a more creative effect, and if you're doing anything else and you just say you just want the black and white and you had your own settings that you made and you like your camera to shoot a certain way, save that on a different one and do just aperture priority mode. And you already know, say you want 1.8 in all these shots, you know, like it's already set up, you don't have to move your dials around. But when you're in there, you can change your settings, and then when you switch out of it and then switch back into it, it'll be whatever you saved previously. So if it was a 1.4 when you created the dial, and then you make it a 5, and then you change out and change back in, it'll be back to 1.4. So keep that in mind too. Now the next thing is the thing that I'm most excited about, because these are lenses. Who doesn't like lenses, right? I think that lenses are also kind of like up to you and what style of lenses you like to use and what type of photo you're going for. But I have 3 lenses and I use them all periodically. for different things, really. The one I have been using recently is the Sigma Art 35mm 1.4. That thing is amazing. I get the most beautiful, like crispy, detailed photos, and it's so sharp. There's no chromatic abrasions. I couldn't recommend that lens more. I wanted a 35mm when I got that one, and I was looking at that or the Tamron, and the Tamron had yeah, it was kind of hard to choose because Tamron had image stabilization and the Sigma does not. And I think the Tamron's also a little bit weather sealed, which is important to me. The Sigma is not, but it is really sharp, and the quality that comes out of that is just, in my opinion, unmatched for what I'm looking for. If you shoot more video though, I would say go for the Tamron. It's a pretty good lens. But I got the 35 because I had a 50 and I didn't have a 35, and the 50 sometimes I feel was too tight for me. I wanted something a little bit more wide, but I didn't want to go like as wide as say like a 24 or something, which is nice, but I don't know, I like the 35 look. I could go on all day about this one. I'm gonna go to the next one. The 50mm that I use is the Canon, I think it is a 1.4 50mm. That one is nice, and it's the first lens that I bought actually. So I got a Canon 70D, and that was like my first camera into the Canon series, or Canon line, Canon family. And I got the 50mm, and that one has been a trusty little 50mm lens since I got it, but I think as I moved up and got like L glass and Sigma, that lens to me just doesn't hold up as much as it did when I first got it. It's not outputting what I want it to. I think it's a bit soft on a lot of occasions, and the chromatic abrasions like purple and green are all over it. It's not a horrible lens, but it's just the one that I use the least at the moment. After that, however, I do have a 24-105 lens, which is what I'm filming on right now. This lens is a really trusty, handy-dandy go-to lens because it is weather sealed. It is L glass, so it's pretty good, and then it has image stabilization on top of it, and of course it's a zoom lens, so you can do different types of things with it. Yeah, I almost always have this in my bag when I'm in Japan, because if I'm shooting with my Sigma and it starts to rain, it's over, it's done, unless you use like a little rain guard or something, which I have one. Not a fan of it. Can't see my screen, it's really annoying. But when I'm running around and then it's raining and I put the 24-105 on there, I pretty much don't care about the rain. The rain is all over my camera, and I pretty much just take a cloth that I keep on me for the rain, and I just kind of dry it off every now and then, and it's fine. Honestly, this lens and this camera is weather sealed really nicely. You know, if your camera has a problem, don't blame me for that. You know, like weather sealing, I have read online, is not the most like, I don't know if I want to say durable, or like everybody's weather sealing is not perfect. There is one thing, however, I did want to mention about this lens. Look at that. So as I'm walking around, it always seems to just extend on its own. I don't know if anybody else has this issue or not, but it is an issue of mine, and I find that I am constantly bumping into people or things because it is extended on its own on accident, and yeah, it's just one thing to think about with that lens, I suppose. Well, anyway, that is the end of the video. I just wanted to share with you guys how I set up my 5DMark IV. You can set up yours in a totally different way. If you do something different than what I do, or you have a suggestion, please leave it in the comments below. I'd love to hear like what you guys are doing with yours. Do you like shooting the 5DMark IV on the street? Let me know, because personally I like it, but I do know that it is a bigger camera, and it is harder to get certain shots with it because of the size of the camera. And sadly, my favorite lens, the 35mm Sigma lens, kind of comes out a bit, so it's not the most like discreet thing that I could be shooting with. So, and I'm curious if any of you are interested in getting this camera too, because now it's a couple years old, but that means that the price is going to drop, especially when the new one comes out. And I would still highly recommend this camera for anybody. It's going to do anything you need it to do. Comment on 4K earlier. It's just, it shoots 4K. It's a cropped 4K, and the file size is insane. I shot 10 minutes, it was like 60 gigs, so with a grain of salt. But 4K is not what this video is about. It's about street photography, and can you still do it with a big DSLR and a 5D Mark IV? The answer is yes. I like the shots that I get with it. With it being full frame and having weather sealing, I really can't pass it up that easy. The only thing I would want to move from this on to is I'm thinking about maybe like a Leica Q. Not the 2, probably just the Leica Q. But yeah, so anyway, thanks for watching. I will see you in the future, and let me know what you thought about it. See you later.